What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Back again. I want to speak on the subject of technology, uh, basically our phones. So, cellular technology, I don't know if I mentioned it to you before, was actually discovered in about 1900s, around there. So, Nikola Tesla and his group of people uh, would go around and to people who made new discoveries technology wise, and these people would magically disappear, and as he was also a scientist, or uh, he would take these things and perfect them, and they would take them as their own, him and the entity he belonged to. So we weren't actually introduced to this as the public around roughly 1,000 years later. During that time, obviously they're going to have expanded ideas, and they're going to be ahead of the time that we're in. Much like when the government comes out with a secret top-notch fighter jet. We won't see it for 20, 30 years later. It's the same concept. Now, as we know, uh, many countries are interested on spying each other and trying to get the upper hand. So say I belong to a gang, right? Um, and I have certain information, and I have certain technology, and I'm advanced at it, but I slowly spoon feed it to other gangs around me, um, to the point where they think that they've mastered it, and even might have thought that they came up with it. And uh, the whole time, I'm spoon feeding you knowledge that I'm way advanced in. So now you set up a cellular system, and you think you're top of the line, but you're behind in the times, because I've had almost 1,000 years to study this and to advance it. Um, Now it would be easy for me to start controlling these other groups, because the systems they're using, miraculously I have a microchip, or I have certain information or certain technology that I made, that my gang has made, and we start feeding it to these other gangs. And by the time you've built uh, a fully successful and economy and structure based on this information that you've been spoon fed, now I solely, as a one entity, have control of all these groups across the board. uh, you know it's a lot of times, this is what happens when um, we let our egos get ahead of us. You find a new piece of information, and you run away with it, thinking that you may have created, instead of trying to backtrack and figure out, well, how was this created and where did this come from. So like what I like to do, I studied not law here in the free world, but law in behind prison walls. I would find out, what the law was made of, why was it made, and how it became. And so, as a society, we let ourselves get away, and along with money and greed, uh, we took, not realizing that it was one guy spoon feeding you. And now, let's say it was China, Afghanistan, Russia, Germany, who knows, but it's a fact that this information and this technology was out around that time, and we didn't get it till much, much, much later. So that left us, or leaves us, open to being taken advantage of from uh, opposing forces, or people who just want to take advantage of your specific family, your specific people, race. uh, you know we've been left open to pretty much being attacked in what you would be called a Cold War manner. So they would sneakily be pushing you into a corner, and you'd be walking over there yourself, because you're not realizing what's going on. And this phone, it's good for many things, but it's not so good for many things. For instance, the other day, I was trying to find a consulate, and I punched it in on my GPS. It took me to the general area, where there was a wall of officers blocking it off. and it automatically brought me back home. I'm new to the area, so I was halfway back coming from another direction before I realized that, hey, wait a second, man, I never touched the phone, and it's taking me back home. So that's the perfect example of what a lot of us have fell asleep to, and are not realizing that this technology is not as new as you think it is, and it's not, uh, and you don't really know who's controlling it. So uh, take heed, and that's why I always tell people, don't be afraid to talk to your neighbors, because you know just like we learned back in the day that a lot of the news that we're fed is BS. Well, this phone has ultimate control over you because you let it get to that point in your life where you base all your decisions on what you see on your screen, instead of talking to your neighbor or your coworker, or just word of mouth. Word of mouth, is actually more beneficial than you think, and it's actually more truthful than you think, because this phone can instantly twist an idea, and and you being so integrated into the system, you automatically believe it without question, and you don't know what's real. And so it's, just a little bit of food for thought, and something to wrap your mind around, and maybe open up your mind a little bit. And thank you for your time. Blessings.